welcome you on into another episode of the Big Time Sports Podcast Show with myself, Mitch Spinell, alongside Mitchell Balla here on the Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, Mitch, for joining me for another day to talk here about sports for the next hour or so.
I wouldn't miss it, sir. I don't know. I never would.
Well, we have a pretty packed show for you as we head into the rest of the week. And before we get into our first topic of the day, I want to remind you guys, obviously, Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud, so you can find the podcast. Also, if you're watching here on YouTube, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. You can also go to our website, BigTimeSportsOhio.com, as well as our individual social medias and BTS Ohio on Twitter, Big Time Sports Ohio on Instagram. So, Mitch, boy, oh boy, we don't usually start off with this type of show, but you see what I'm holding in my hand here? You see what I got right here? You know what this is called? This is called a soccer ball. This is called a soccer ball because we earned that yesterday. Say it with me, Mitch. USA. USA. Boy, yesterday, the United States making it back to the round of 16 after a 1-0 win over Iran. Iran, I'm pretty sure it is. I know there's a whole thing this week.
Iran.
Mitch, we actually did what we had to do. That was a game in which you could not lose, obviously, but you cannot tie either because both the U.S. and the other country both had 2 ties going into their match game, and the U.S. had to pull one out, and they did. So now they will be going on to the elimination knockout stage. It's a good time. It's a good time just to be star-spangled and just drinking in the fact that, you know, we're sending about maybe a fifth of our best athletes in the world, and they're getting it done on the world stage this year.
They're getting it done in a sport and a team, obviously not all these players, that has not gotten it done in years past, Mitch. We are into the round of 16. We play the Netherlands on Saturday at 10 a.m. However, Mitch, yes, we are in the round of 16. We are still allowed to win the whole World Cup.
Yeah.
Making it this far, though, was the original goal. Because how many times have we seen the U.S. men's national team come up short and or embarrass the country because they just cannot perform to the level that we are accustomed and expect when we talk about teams to represent the country? I mentioned it to you before when the Olympics happen, how much everybody gets into it because it's for the country and every country has their respective sports. You would think a sport like soccer that a lot of people, almost every kid for the most part growing up, Mitch, plays at some point. You would think that's something we would be good at, but we are alive to win the World Cup. But your biggest goal was to make it out and into the round of 16, which you did. I'm not saying I'm going to be happy with the loss because obviously I'm not. I'd like to see us beat Netherlands in advance, but everything now, Mitch, is something to build on for the 2026 World Cup and is kind of icing or sprinkles, whatever dessert you want to talk about, on top. But what a phenomenal game. And honestly, it was so nerve-wracking. I don't know about you, but the last 25 minutes of regulation before the extra time was put on, Mitch, oh my gosh, I was on the edge of my seat. My heart was pounding. And for the first time in a long time, I saw a team play prevent and they actually won. Because generally the rule of thumb, Mitch, is if you play prevent defense, you're preventing yourself from winning. And were we that close? Were we that close to having a tie with, I believe, about 15 minutes, including the stoppage time left? Nerve-wracking, but Christian Pulisic, Captain America. He is Captain America right now. Not only did he score the only goal, Mitch, he put his manhood on the line. Legitimately put his manhood on the line. He was rushed to the hospital during halftime of the match. He's playing on Saturday, so he said. I don't know if you saw the picture that's gone viral on social media. It's been out there. He sent a Snapchat of what it looked like of him in the bed at the hospital saying he is proud of his boys and ready to play on Saturday. He will be ready to play. You want to talk about a guy coming up big in the biggest moment that a team needed him. And Pulisic, Mitch, has been not anointed, but pretty much crowned as this leader of the U.S. men's national team. And he delivered. What a match. What, 3 games in the pool we're in. I believe it's Pool B. Wow. I love the World Cup.
Yeah, and we talk about this as if we are now the favorites in the Cup. We know we're not, but it's just a great time for the sport in our country because it usually isn't this prolific. I mean, this is a team that 4 years ago was not even in the cup at all.
Right.
This was a team that couldn't even qualify after so many years of just barely making it out of group play. I believe the last 2 appearances were advanced to the round of 16 before losing. And I hope this could lead to kind of a surge in people maybe taking an interest in the game, so that by not even by 2026, but beyond that, we can maybe get some serious competition in here as well. But 26 will be exciting, especially with the hosting opportunity we have.
That especially. I mean, could you imagine if we are, what it would be like for us to get to the round of 16 if we are the winner of hosting, and just what it would be if we could go on a run. But this was just, how cool is it, Mitch, to see when you talk about the big sports in the United States, right? Football 1, basketball probably 2, baseball 3, and then you're generally talking about hockey at 4, soccer's 5. And actually, Mitch, there's people who argue soccer's 6 because they say UFC and MMA is number 5.
Yep.
Mitch, there were people across the country yesterday who took off work, who were in bars watching the game with friends and family. I mean, it's so awesome to see how much we rally around a team in a sport that's not the most popular, but just because it has our country's flag on it. I think that's the coolest part. And now it's going to be like that on Saturday. I for those out there that don't know, I coach a summer baseball team. We have practice Saturday at 10 a.m., Mitch. I'm trying to move practice because I want to watch the game against the Netherlands. I really am. And if we don't, there's a TV where we practice. The match is going to be on. But I'm excited. This has been a joy, especially there was so much built up pressure on this group, right? And I'm not going to sit here. I don't know all the soccer logistics and terminology, but any just regular fan knows there was so much built up pressure on this group because of how young they were, how much work has went into it, and the expectation, and they delivered. And that's the biggest thing. And now they have a chance to really shock the world if they can continue to win in the round of 16 and go on to the 8. We'll see how far they can go, but this was a huge step in the right direction for soccer in North America, the United States of America, and for the U.S. men's national team.
It's not going to be easy. You're going to have a Netherlands team that went 2-1 in match play this weekend, beating Senegal and Qatar, and then having a draw up against Ecuador. So we'll see how it goes. And but yeah, it's really cool to see the United States pull that one out. So when we come back, we'll get more into some of our regular sports here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show.
Buying a home has never been so affordable with record low interest rates. Hartzler's Quality Housing is ready to put over 40 years of experience to work for you. Family owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's has a wide selection of model homes on site with a knowledgeable team to help make your new home a reality. Open 6 days a week. Visit them off I-77 in Dover or online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
You invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates want you to feel secure should anything happen to those investments. We partnered with providers like Grange Insurance and other industry leaders to be sure you're presented with the most complete coverage to fit your needs. Because we're not only here to protect the items you invest in, we're here to protect your future as well.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
When others treat your fries as an afterthought, all you're left with are cold, soggy fries. That's why Wendy's new fries are ones you won't forget, guaranteed to be hot and crispy, or we'll replace them. We're talking natural cut, skin-on fries, perfectly seasoned with a hint of sea salt. In fact, they're even preferred almost 2-to-1 over McDonald's. These are fries so hot and crispy, they beg a new question.
What would you like with your fries?
Try them today, only at Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's. Taste preference based on a national taste test by an independent research
Back here on the
company.
Big Time Sports Podcast Show, Mitch Spinell alongside Mitchell Balla. Mitch, you know, we've been talking a lot about high school sports on this podcast through our run so far, and we are transitioning now over from the fall to the winter seasons here very soon. We're actually into the beginning of the start of the year. It is basketball time, along with many other winter sports here in our areas.
Yeah, really, we're only going to talk about high school football one more time, Mitch, and it's going to be on the next episode when we recap all the state championship games that are going to be played the day this podcast episode releases over at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. If you're looking for something to do this weekend, I highly recommend coming down and watching one of the 7 state championship games because there's going to be a lot of talent and a lot of good football played. But as we enter high school basketball season, Mitch, it is big in the state of Ohio. It's big everywhere in Ohio. Sports in Ohio are a big thing, especially at the high school level. We know that football is obviously number 1, but basketball is number 2. And as we head into basketball, Mitch, we're going to be covering a lot of the teams in our areas, talking to coaches. And if you already missed it, we got to talk to Coach Mark Kinsley of the Green Bulldogs, the head varsity basketball coach last week, as well as head coach Anthony Butch of the Jackson Lady Polar Bears, 2 teams with high expectations this year. So make sure you go back and look at that. And Mitch, I think it's safe to say we're going to try to have every coach that's willing to come on and that we can fit their availability with. But we talk about a lot of talented players. There's a lot of talented players on the court in basketball. And some were guys we've already talked about in football this year.
Absolutely. And we've already had 2 local coaches on this podcast so far earlier this year, and one Anthony Kinsley from Green and Anthony Butch, Mark Kinsley, excuse me, and then Anthony Butch of Jackson. So when we go into this year, Mitch, who are some of the top returning teams in your opinion from last year?
Well, that's a really great question. And it's a tough question because around here in Stark County, it's the same way as football, right? You have the Federal League, which, Mitch, in boys and girls basketball, it's touted as one of the best, if not the best conferences in the state of Ohio when it comes to Division I. Both boys and girls basketball have had a state representative numerous times over the past year. Just last year in girls, you had Jackson go to the state Final Four. A couple years ago in boys, you've had Green make some regional runs. Jackson's made it and won 2 state championships. McKinley's made some runs. Hoover's won a couple district titles. It's loaded. And what's most exciting about this year, Mitch, there is no clear front runner in the Federal League or in Stark County of who is going to emerge right now at the beginning of the season as the team to beat. And for the first time in a long time, Mitch, it's kind of exciting and also kind of nerve-wracking because on any given night, at least in Federal League play, any of the 7 teams can beat each other. And every team in the Federal League has a player that you're going to want to see, if that makes sense, whether it's for your school or whether your school is playing them. And outside of the Federal League, Central Catholic boasts a number of players. You have Massillon with somebody like Ardale Banks, who is a Division I recruit for football that plays basketball. So not only have you seen that man go up and get footballs out of the air for his quarterback, now just envision him without the pads on a basketball court jumping out of the gym. You have somebody like Will Aljancic, Mitch, who really, if you ask a lot of people around Stark County in Northeast Ohio, was under-recruited. He's a 3-star here in Northeast Ohio. He's committed to Findlay. The kid can score from all over the court. Just last night in the loss to McKinley, I believe he had 26 or 28 points. There is so much talent. You look at somebody like Green. I'm not going to even try to pronounce his last name, but they have a sophomore named Nikola, who obviously sounds a little bit Russian. He is Russian. He was moved over here young in his life. 6'8", Mitch. He already has a couple Division I offers. You have kids at McKinley, a team that really, to their standards, underperformed last year, but really kind of had the front runner for Federal League Player of the Year if you had to pick somebody at the beginning of the year. And that McKinley team, Mitch, has 12 guys with varsity experience from last year. So if you're going to tab a team right now that you think would be the favorite, it has to be McKinley, as well as not only to win the Federal League, but also Federal League Player of the Year. Trayshawn Foster, a Mount Union commit, Mitch. You talk about another kid that's kind of been highly under recruited. This is another kid that's going to Division III level. Now, Mount, one of the top programs in Division III in the country, I believe they're ranked 8th right now while we record this, just got a star in Trayshawn Foster. He had 36 last night in that win over Louisville. These teams are going to be fun. Lake has a solid backcourt of guards. Green has size and athleticism. Jackson Young, they have a couple sophomore point guards, junior Owen Wolbert, who's 6'7". Perry, Mitch, actually has a new coach and a player that I think you're familiar with from down in your area, Mitch Saban, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. And this is a Perry Panther team that won one game all last year, and they already equaled their win total in just one game. And Saban went off. His dad is now the head coach at Perry. Hoover, what can you say about Hoover under head coach Mike Bluey? That's a disciplined team that plays to their style. They're not always going to score a lot of points, but they can, as they did last night, scoring over 70, defeating Garfield Heights, I believe, 72-39. They like to play their style. They like to slow it down. They usually play games in the 40s and 30s, which a lot of people don't like, but the Federal League is wide open. Glen Oak, I don't want to leave them out of the mix, with Coach Harrison, who was at Timken before they merged with McKinley back in 2016, who was a very well-respected coach. The Federal League's going to be fun. Central Catholic's a team that's going to be fun. Massillon, you don't know yet. Louisville, St. Thomas Aquinas. Mitch, basketball in Stark County is going to be fun. And I can only imagine it's going to be the same way down there with you in Tusk County.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned Mickey Saban coming in from Central over to the new program, bringing his son Xander along with him as well. You know, and that brings us over to Tuscarawas County, where you look at the standings from last year. On the boys' side, you had Malvern making a bit of a playoff run while also winning the Inter-Valley Conference, just ahead of Strasburg and Central, while in the South, Highland, the runaway winner in that one. But just behind was Garaway in terms of IVC records, and then Tusky Valley, Indian Valley, Ridgewood, and Sandy all had double-digit wins, although Sandy Valley finished with a losing record for the year and wasn't as successful in IVC play. On the girls' side, meanwhile, we had Strasburg as a top team, going undefeated, 11-0 in IVC play, 20-4 overall. Tusky Valley, a similar record, 11-1, 20-5. Then you have Central and Highland right behind the two in those respective divisions of the IVC. Now, it's going to be very interesting because, you know, Strasburg's girls especially are bringing back a lot of a number of the same talent from last year. Only 2 seniors on the team, but they have a standout in sophomore Riley Thomas, who was one of my personal favorite players to watch last year on the girls' side. On the boys' side, Highland is one of the most, you know, proficient programs in not just Tuscarawas County, but maybe all of Ohio. And Garaway will be very interesting. Garaway still has a number of their players back. You have the Rodins. You have a number of other guys that can do some damage. Tusky Valley can get in there as well a little bit. Indian Valley, we'll see what happens there. Malvern will, again, I think Malvern and Strasburg, that's a 2-team race in the IVC, unless Central or Buckeye Trail can maybe pop in there and go on a run, especially against those 2 top schools in the Hornets and the Tigers. So we come back here, we'll go more into the other sides of sports. We'll also go into some of the offseason stuff that's been going on. So stay with us.
You asked for it, and we listened.
The Furby Electric Supply Company has bright ideas for your home. Save money by converting to energy-efficient electrical products or add ambiance with beautiful lighting features. It begins with a professional consultation and a visit to the Furby Lighting Showroom. Then certified Furby contractors complete your project right and on time. Since 1934, 4 generations have built a reputation of quality and trust, and they offer emergency services too. Just visit Furby.com. That's F-U-R-B-A-Y. The Furby Electric Supply Company.
For more information, you asked for it, and we listened. Buckeye Career Center is now offering Certified Nail Technician as an adult education program. This 216-hour course begins in November and will run Tuesday through Thursday evenings from 5 to 9 p.m. Learn manicures, pedicures, infection control, salon operations, and more. Other part-time certification courses starting this fall include phlebotomy and welding. Call 330-339-2288 to register or visit BuckeyeCareerCenter.org for more information.
Visit to the
If you're looking for a new or pre-owned car or truck, why not see the Parkway Auto
right
Group?
and on time.
Parkway is a
Since
special group of
1934,
automotive
4 generations have
with
built a
8 brands
reputation
to
of
satisfy
quality and
your
trust,
needs.
and they offer
Come see the
emergency
difference
services
at the
too.
Parkway
Just
Auto
visit
Group on Commercial
Furby.com.
Parkway in
That's
Dover.
F-U-R-B-A-Y.
8 brands
The
and 1
Furby
family.
Electric Supply
It's Parkway
Company.
Auto Group. It takes a lot of practice. to have a winning team. Has over 100 years of combined experience real estate title and escrow transactions. They serve Tuscarawas, Carroll, Stark, Harrison counties and more. So choose Albin Title for your next home refinance, sale or purchase. They'll get it done quickly and contact Albin Title at 330-330-5800 or visit their website albintitle.com. Let them put their experience to work for you.
Fall is in the air and part-time career enhancement courses at Buckeye Career Center are on the horizon. Registration is now open for Introduction to Beekeeping, Basic Small Engine Repair, and Sign Language. These part-time offerings run on Tuesday evenings and begin in November. Let Buckeye Career Center help you learn a new skill or advance your current skill set. Call 330-339-2288 for more information or to reserve your seat in one of these or our other part-time classes. Fall is in the air and part-time career enhancement courses at Buckeye Career Center.
Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. All care.
For more information or to reserve your seat in one of these or our other part-time classes.
Where you matter.
Back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast show, Mitch Spinell here, Mitchell Balla there. And it is now time, Mitch, to go into week 12 of the NFL season. Man, it just keeps flying further and further, and soon we'll get into the postseason. Not saying whether or not the Browns will be in the postseason, but we'll be seeing them very, very soon. Now, but before we get to that game, though, we have to go over the other ones that are coming on this week. We start off on Thursday night, where you have an AFC East matchup between a team that's kind of really finding its footing right now and then a team that's just kind of existing, and at least in my mind. You have the Buffalo Bills up against the New England Patriots, a game in which the line is -4 for Buffalo. Bills seem to be finding their ways with wins against you have Cleveland and then Detroit, which brings the record up to 8-3 up against the Patriots, who are currently sitting at 6-5. Now, Mitch, are you going to take the upset here and take the Patriots at home? Or is this still a game that the top team in the division, I think if they're the top team in the division, will take?
I think this is going to be very close. I think I would not be shocked if the Patriots win, but I'm going to have to go with the team that has the better quarterback and just the better team in general, which is the Buffalo Bills. However, this is the first time they're meeting this year. They will meet again in week 18. If the Bills do win this, I wouldn't be shocked if the Patriots make the necessary adjustments and win week 18. But for now, I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills.
So we're going to take Buffalo. I'm taking Buffalo as well. I'm going to take the favorites. This just feels like Buffalo's, after having those couple of losses, those kind of weird ones, the Jets and the Vikings. I think they're settling themselves now, and they'll end up winning the division like I predicted earlier this year. So now we go over to the Sunday slate. And if I can get the records up here. First of all, I should mention that I actually had a good week last week, but I still finished 4th out of our entire pool of predictions. I was 8-7 for week 12. You were 9-6, which tied for second. I just had we both picked the Browns against the Browns, I should say. Just came back to haunt us, and I worry that this week will do the same. Anyway, we'll now go over to Pittsburgh and Atlanta. Steelers only a 1-point favorite. Just not a very attractive sort of game, but I think this is one where the Steelers actually pull it out.
I think the Steelers will pull it out. At the same time, though, I'm taking the Falcons because this is a team that is still very much alive in the playoff race because of how bad the NFC South is. And the Steelers kind of in a letdown spot after getting a Monday Night Football win over the Colts. And this is on the road. I'm not going to be shocked. It's obviously a 1-point favorite for Pittsburgh. I'm going to go with Atlanta here, though.
Okay, so you're taking the Falcons. I have the Steelers. We have another Steelers pick in there. And then we have an afternoon matchup of one of football's greatest rivalries, which isn't so great this year, especially. You have the 4-8 Packers against the 3-9 Bears. Mitch, talk about your pick first, because I got to build up here.
I'm taking the Packers just because we don't know who's playing quarterback yet for the Bears, as well as the fact that Aaron Rodgers owns the the Chicago Bears. I believe at one point it was even on Wikipedia, he was part owner after he beat them so many times in a row. I don't know how many times I'm going to pick the Packers because, they're not out of it until they're officially out of it with Aaron Rodgers. There's a chance he might not play, but until their season's over, I expect to see him out there. I am going to go with the Packers, though, just because I trust, stupid as that sounds for how he's played this year, I do trust Aaron Rodgers.
It'd be easy to, because I initially thought, what if I took the upset pick and said Chicago because of Aaron Rodgers? Possibly he's not practicing on Wednesday, and Matt LaFleur did say that he expects him to play Sunday, but it's such a questionable thing for me that I feel like it would at best be a game time decision. That being said, Justin Fields may not be back on the field this week, and he is the only reason that they've been able to compete in games that they can't even win in the last few weeks. So I'll go with Green Bay. I was going to go Chicago. I'll go back to Green Bay, and that's my final answer. Who wants to be a millionaire? We start over now to Jacksonville and Detroit, where, Jaguars have a 1-point advantage. It's not too bad. They're both 4-7. It's in Detroit. I don't know. I feel like this one I could see the Lions just being able to pull out, and I don't know. It's just kind of a toss-up.
Second toss-up of the week, really. I mean, you're talking about two different games that are just, there's only a 1-point favorite. I'm going to go with the Lions. Typically in years past, this is probably a game you would take the Jag, but with how the Lions have played this year, Mitch, I trust Dan Campbell. I think they're going to bite a kneecap.
So then we go over now to the Vikings and the Jets. Excuse me, I read that wrong. I thought it was Giants initially. That's a game for another game. Well, the Jets are 7-4 still, but they're going through their thing with Zach Wilson. Minnesota is 9-2. They're one of the top teams in the NFC at home. Even I think you got to take Minnesota here, because this just doesn't seem like a game they would lose, except if the Jets can play well on defense, which I don't know. I don't know if they can.
Defense generally travels, and I think this is the game you look at a line like this. Minnesota's a 3-point favorite, and generally a home team always gets 3, so it'd be even technically. I like the Vikings here. I'm taking the Vikings. I just think that the uncertainty at quarterback, although Mike White came out and was throwing the ball around last week and was, I believe, one of the top 3 rated quarterbacks in week 12, I'm going to take the Vikings. It's a 1:00 game in Minnesota. They're going to get this win.
All right. So then the Giants now take on the Commanders. Look, this one is where I think the Jets are the Giants are coming back down to earth. Yep. It was a good story. It was a nice run for them, but now Washington on the road is 2.5-point favorites. They got something special going. I know they lost, they won, excuse me. They haven't lost in a month right now, and they've won 6 out of their last 7 games after starting off the year 1-4. So I'm going to take Washington. And as crazy as that would have sounded a month ago, I think I'm going to be comfortable in saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit it right on the head. I think the Giants are coming back to reality of what we expected them to be this year. It's not a knock on them at all. They might just be a year or 2 early. I think that just speaks volume about Brian Daboll as their head coach, what he's been able to do with that roster, because really not a whole lot of weapons on the outside. Some question marks. Daniel Jones has shown glimpses of actually being very good, but Washington's found something right now, Mitch. I'm going to stay with the Commanders.
All right. So then we go now to the Titans and the Eagles, 2 playoff contenders. Philadelphia more so at 10-1 at home, 5.5-point favorites after Tennessee had a bit of a tough one this past week against the Bengals. I'm okay with picking the Eagles. I don't know if Tennessee has enough in the tank to get an upset here.
This is a team that I could see beating the Eagles because they can run the ball and control the time of possession and the clock with Derrick Henry in the backfield. At the same time, though, the Eagles are obviously the better team. I'm going to take the Eagles. I'm not going to be surprised one bit if the Titans do win. This would be a game if you were, in a state that allows betting. If you were betting on it, probably stay away.
All right. So, boy, oh boy, we have a matchup of the week here. Ravens and Broncos. We all have Ravens. We're going to pick Ravens. It's Ravens. It's going to be Ravens. It's got to be Ravens, and we're done. So then we have the next game, the Seahawks and the Rams. Also one I could kind of just cast aside. One of you guys wrote 49ers in here for whatever reason, but the We have Seahawks and Rams. I'm going to go Seahawks.
I'm also taking the Seahawks. I think that last week's, walk-off loss to the Raiders is going to put them in a spot here where they need a bounce back game to stay alive in the NFC West after getting off to a terrific start. The Rams are so bad. They're just so bad.
It's one of the worst examples of Super Bowl hangover I've ever seen. I've seen in the last decade, at least. So then we have the Dolphins in a 405 matchup against the 49ers. Both teams are really coming on strong. San Francisco's a 4-point favorite at home, but I think that this is one that Miami can pull out. Still got Tua doing his work there. Tyreek is questionable with an injury right now, but there's still a possibility he could play Sunday. And I think that Miami's offense can match up well with that San Francisco defense. I'm going to take Miami.
I think that you're right. The offense can match up well with the defense. I just don't know if the Dolphins have seen a defense like San Francisco yet. And that's why I'm going to stay with the Niners at home. The Dolphins traveling to the West Coast. Mike McDaniel going back to where he was last season. I really like the Niners and how they're playing football right now.
All right. So then we have star quarterbacks in a dual matchup. Kansas City and Cincinnati. This game is favored to the Chiefs only by 2 points. So there's something because it's in Cincinnati. I think this is one that the Chiefs drop, and this might be their last loss of the season. I'm going Bengals.
Yeah, I'm going with the Bengals too, because I think that the Chiefs are going to have some extra motivation because not only did they lose to the Bengals last year in Cincy, they then lost at home to the Bengals in the AFC Championship game. Jamar Chase coming back now. I think that the Chiefs might play out of their comfort zone in terms of just staying within themselves. They've also just been on a hot streak, which is not necessarily always has to end, but the Bengals are in a spot right now, Mitch, where they have to keep winning if they have hopes of winning the AFC North, because although they're tied with the Ravens right now, the Ravens have that head-to-head tiebreaker. So I'm going to stick with Cincinnati at home.
All right. So then we go out to the West Coast. We have the Chargers up against the Raiders. Chargers only at 6-5. Raiders at 4-7. Chargers only a 1.5 favorite on the road. Not an easy place to play if you're an opposing team for Vegas. I'm gonna still take Chargers on this one.
I'm gonna go with the Raiders, and that's kind of an off the board pick. But with how they've played the past couple of weeks, getting the huge win last week in Seattle, the Chargers and Staley at head coach, they've had a lot of injuries this year. I believe they've actually been one of the most, if not the most, injured team in all the NFL. Not saying the Raiders are going to go on a run here, but I do like the Raiders at home. These two teams can go back and forth with points scored and everything, Mitch, but give me the Raiders.
Raiders. All right. So then we have a Sunday night game in Dallas between the Colts and the Cowboys. I'm surprised this one stayed in its spots for so long. Dallas is an 11-point favorite, which is by far the highest point differential this week. This is one that I could see the Cowboys falling short of expectations on, but I still think they would beat Indianapolis.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking the Cowboys here this week, but to your point, this is a game I could see the Colts getting up for and, cover its 11-point spread, which is huge, especially in the NFL. I think the Colts will make this an entertaining game. We are in the season where, primetime games can get flexed. It started a couple weeks ago. As much as I wanted this game flex, I had a feeling it wouldn't get flexed strictly because the Cowboys are playing.
Yeah.
That's basically the only reason it stayed in the primetime slot.
Pretty much. Then we have the Monday night game. Tampa Bay is 3.5-point favorites right now over New Orleans. I think it should be more than that. I'll go with Tampa Bay handily, even after the way they lost to the Browns.
Give me the Saints. This is a team that always gives the Buccaneers and Tom Brady fits, especially in the regular season. With Wirfs out, as it looks like for Tampa Bay, I think the Saints defensive line is going to give them, hell, really. I don't know. We don't know what the status of Leonard Fournette is yet, whether he's, playing. He's listed as questionable right now. I like the Saints here in an upset.
All right. And that leads us to our last game of the slate. The Browns, man, they're going to Houston, and so is Deshaun Watson, back for the first time since the trade. And, okay, I'm going to start off with what I think before I get to you. This is a game that it's almost like the start of a trial run. Browns team now, where they have their supposed franchise guy, and he's going to come out. He's going to look rusty. I think he's going to look rusty. He hasn't played for such a long time as far as prime athletes go. There's a lot of stuff off the field that I'm sure will be kind of weighing on him, maybe even in the stadium, as we've heard reports. And I still think that the Texans are so downtrodden that the Browns can still win, but it's not going to be this high point differential that you would normally expect. Even though I believe, the Browns are 7-point favorites going into the contest. So, Mitch, I'm curious about this last minute change.
Yeah, I did just switch to the Texans and pick them. I'm doing that because I'm a Browns fan and I am superstitious. I picked the Browns to win 2 games this year. I'm 1-1. The game I picked because they were expected to win, they lost in the Jets. The other game I picked was the Bengals because we own the city of Cincinnati. I'm taking the Texans here because this is their Super Bowl. I'm taking it because there is so much built up drama around this. The Browns have to win to stay alive. The Browns should win this game, Mitch, and I expect them to, but strictly off superstition, I'm taking the Texans and pick them. At the same time, first game Deshaun Watson's playing in over 700 days.
Yep.
Going back to the place he requested a trade from, with all the off-field drama going. We've heard the news. We're not going to get into it about what's going on at the stadium this week and who's going to be in attendance. This is the perfect spot for the Browns to have a Browns letdown spot after beating Tom Brady and the Bucs last week. This is where it would happen. I do expect the Browns to win, but for the sake of Browns fans out there, I'm taking the Texans and pick them. I will gladly take a loss and pick them.
That's fine. As far as Texans go, if we beat the Texans, I could easily see a letdown against the next 2 games in Cincinnati and Baltimore, especially because Cincinnati's at home for their contest. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? It's going to be a very interesting atmosphere, so to say, in Texas next Sunday. So we'll be watching it, and likely so will you. So when we come back, we'll be going into our final segment here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. We at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new
Our orthopedic experts
will keep you going while keeping you safe.
For every break
and breakthrough. For every bone and joint.
Every care in the world.
Get the care you need when and where you need.
Visit
unionhospital.org.
Hard work is something you're accustomed to. Van Nostrand Young understands that principle. Our access is achieved with organizations like Grange Insurance. Safety and prevention specialists utilize our VanCan assessments process to ensure that you and your colleagues are in the best hands. You want the safest environment for your business, and we can guide you there.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
If you're purchasing a new home, the team at Quality Housing is here to help. Take advantage of record low interest rates to make your new home a reality. Locally owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's Quality Housing has the experience to guide you through the process. You'll find a wide selection of model homes on site to fit any budget. Open 6 days a week just off I-77. You can also visit them online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's why Wendy's new fries are ones we consider you guaranteed to be hot and crispy, to be part of our family.
We're talking natural cut skin on fries, perfectly seasoned.
But when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
Try them today, only at Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's, taste preference based on a national taste test by an independent research
When
company.
others treat your fries as an afterthought, all you're left with are cold, soggy
You deserve
fries.
the best.
That's why
And
Wendy's
at
new
Ferris
fries
Chevrolet,
are ones
Buick,
you won't
Cadillac,
forget,
Toyota,
guaranteed to
that's
be hot
what you
and
get.
crispy, or
We
we'll replace
consider
them.
you
We're talking
the
natural cut
customer
skin on
to be
fries,
part
perfectly
of our
seasoned with a hint
family.
of sea salt.
Anybody
In
can
fact,
make
they're even
promises,
preferred almost
but
2 to
when you
1
visit
over
Ferris,
McDonald's.
you get
These
the
are fries so
Ferris
hot and
deal
crispy,
from
they
a
beg a new
Ferris
question.
wheel.
What would you like
So
with
if
your
you're
fries?
looking for
Try
a car,
them today,
truck, or
only
van,
at Wendy's.
At participating U.S.
Ferris.
Wendy's, taste preference based on a national taste test by an independent research company.
Back for our final segment here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell alongside Mitchell Ballet. Mitch, it's a wild card round. Well, it's not the wild card round yet. It's a wild card segment for us in which we just talk about anything that comes to mind in the sporting world. We got a number of things going on right now. We have the Cavaliers still going strong at 13-8 so far this year. We'll have the baseball, it's winter meeting talks. We have other things as well. Anything that comes to mind. The Cavaliers, I'll start off with. They take on the 76ers tonight at home, in which it's clearly this is going to be a huge Eastern Conference test. Even though the Cavaliers currently are third in the conference standings compared to the Sixers 12-9 fifth place mark.
Yeah, and this is a huge game, not only for standings, but I think just for the Cavs mentally. Going 1-1 in that road trip, they shot the basketball so poorly in Toronto. You have to give credit to Toronto defensively, but at the same time, second night of a back-to-back on the road for the Cavs, going from Detroit to Toronto. I believe 18% from three. They were 7-30 something from three. That's not going to, you wouldn't think it's going to come back to Cleveland like that. Darius Garland only 18 points. The issue for me here though, Mitch, is although he's probably not our best player, Jared Allen might be your most or second most important player on this Cavs team.
Yep.
And he's out. And we saw last year what happened when Jared Allen was out towards the end of the season. He means so much to this team. I think he takes pressure off Evan Mobley. He allows the Cavs to have that dominant presence in the paint alongside Mobley. And now you're letting a guy come in who, Mitch, might be the best center in all of basketball, if not the best. He's probably top two with the Joker out in Denver in Joel Embiid. This is a huge game because this is a game the Cavs need to win with James Harden and Tyrese Maxey out tonight. This is a game that we need to see a vintage Donovan Mitchell performance or Darius Garland. One of those two guards have to take over the game tonight and dominate, and the Cavs have to win this game at home tonight. They're third in the Eastern Conference standings, I believe, right now at 13-8. What scares me is if the playoffs did start today, good thing they don't. If they did start today, we'd host Toronto. And I think Toronto, to me, Mitch, is the team that gives me the most worry, not because we're 0-2 against them, just because it's a tough matchup for us. And when we go to Toronto, they still try to take out all the years of frustration of LeBronto on us. And I think we've seen that now in 2 games. But the Cavs started off hot, had that, 5-game losing streak where we were like, whoa, okay, what's going on here? They've righted the ship. They're back to what we expect. And now they're going to go into a stretch here where they're going to play some playoff teams, some teams that you're really going to get to know what type of team the Cavs are. And that's why I think tonight is such an important game in general. Game 22 on the or 23 on the season. And no, I'm not good at math. 22 on the season. This is game 22 on the season. And this is probably the biggest game of the year, in my opinion, for the Cavs. So far.
Yeah, I was gonna say I had more stock in the Celtics game from a few weeks ago, but yeah, I could see that. The Cavs are very good at home, by the way, 8-1. They've only lost to Minnesota so far in the Fieldhouse this year. So yeah, we'll watch that tonight, and then we'll also take a look at the winter meetings that are currently going on in baseball. The big story, obviously, is where is Aaron Judge going to sign this offseason? He's going to come back to the Yankees. Is he going to go somewhere else? Maybe the Giants, maybe the Marlins, maybe the Dodgers. Who knows? Well, there was a report that came out that said that the Yankees might have offered Judge a deal already in the vein of around 8 years, $300 million. And it might be a lowball, Mitch, because this is a guy who's coming off of one of the most historic bet on yourself seasons in all of sports history. And he's 30 years old, which in baseball years nowadays seems like he's ancient because a lot of guys are hitting their primes around ages 23, 24, 25. It's probably going to be the last big contract he gets in his major league career that constitutes more than, like, let's say 2 or 3 years. Is this a deal that Judge signs within maybe the week, maybe the month or so back to the Yankees?
All the reports say he has his teams narrowed down. All the reports say that, it's between the Yankees and the Giants, his hometown team. I don't know if he's going to sign soon. I think what he's going to do is he's going to wait to see what other moves are made this offseason, not only by the Yankees, but other teams around baseball that can afford him. But to your point, this will be the last contract he gets, Mitch. And people are wondering, why isn't he getting Bryce Harper and Mike Trout money? People tend to forget Aaron Judge was an old rookie. right? When Mike Trout and Bryce Harper came into the league, they were late teens, or even Juan Soto, for example, was a teenager. Bryce Harper and Mike Trout, they got their extensions when they were the early 20s. Aaron Judge will be 31 before first pitch is thrown in the 2023 season. That is old in baseball. In terms of baseball, and everyday player, that's old. Now, you can hide Judge at DH, obviously, and he'll be the best DH in baseball. I think he's worth more than the $300 million the Yankees are offering. And I was going to say maybe they're going to go spend money, but even if they are, it doesn't mean anything because there's no salary cap in baseball. I think Judge is going to get probably what Machado got in terms of $330 million. I think that's about right for his age, and if this is going to be his last contract. Mitch, I don't think you're going to see him take another bet on yourself contract where it could be a 2-year deal, maybe a 1 year, and then player option.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if he did it, though. I really wouldn't, especially if it's in New York where he's probably going to put up, maybe not break the home run record that he just set in the American League, but he's going to hit 40 to 50 home runs every year, driving over 100 runs because of the advantage in playing Yankee Stadium, having the short porch and right where he can flick the ball to right field and it's going out. $300 million though, Mitch, to me, if that's what the Yankees offered, is a low ball offer for the American League MVP, for a guy that just broke Roger Maris's home run record in the American League, and for a player that, albeit is not as talented, well-rounded in terms of Mike Trout when he is healthy, but is one of the faces in the game of baseball for Major League Baseball. I don't expect him to sign in the next week. I think he's going to wait probably till midway through, if not the end of the winter meetings. And like I said, see what other teams do, specifically the Yankees and the Giants.
Well, you mentioned Machado. His 10-year, $300 million deal averages out to about $30 million per season. Obviously, most contracts do not work with the exact same equal amount of money per year. Usually it kind of grows with interest, but Judge's deal would give him $37.5 million per season. And I actually pulled up an ESPN Insider article. Where should Aaron Judge sign? Ranking all 30 MLB teams. This is from Bradford Doolittle. And he has the Yankees at number 1. He has the Dodgers at number 2, and he's kind of scaling different things about the situation, like what would his fit rating be in terms of the team? You have factors like the market that he's playing in, the payroll of the team, the geography of the team, the consistency of the organization, the success of the organization, even the ballparks that they play in for him to hit home runs. I said Dodgers are number 2, Mets are number 3, Phillies at number 4. Giants, I don't even see all the way up until 11, which is interesting, even though the Giants have said they're not going to be outbid by anybody else in terms of finances this year, although I don't know if that's going to be the case, if they can do that. And at number 13 is our Cleveland Guardians, man. I mean, look, it says, quote, the Guardians are a consistent winner, but they do it by staying away from massive investments in one player, except for Jose Ramirez, such as they'd have to make to catch Judge's attention. I added the Jose Ramirez thing in the end there. That's not part of the
But it's
quote.
true.
I mean, there's no way on God's green earth that he would ever sign here. It'd be nice, but that'd be such a discount that he'd have to take, like Jose's taking right now. And it's just a pipe dream. He'll go to one of the big markets on the either of the coasts. Yeah. I still think the Giants are higher up than 11, though.
Yeah, I agree. The team that you mentioned there, Mitch, that I find very interesting is the Phillies. A team that just lost in the World Series, and a team that is more than likely going to be without their star player who performed the best of anybody on that team, Bryce Harper, as he just underwent surgery, I believe, on his UCL. That's going to keep him sidelined at the start of the 23 season. We saw him DH in the playoffs. Aaron Judge plays all the outfield positions. We saw him in center most recently. We know he's probably a natural right fielder. The only reason I can't say it's going to be the Phillies is because the Phillies have been very vocal that their top priority is finding a shortstop. I don't see how the Phillies can go out and get one of the top 4 free agent shortstops in Xander Bogaerts, Carlos Correa, Trey Turner, or Dansby Swanson, and afford Aaron Judge. But it's interesting because I could definitely see it happening, but I'm with you. Aaron Judge is staying on the East Coast or the West Coast. I don't see anywhere in between. And when I say that, it's probably the Yankees. I don't buy the Mets. I honestly think I put more stock in the Phillies before the Mets, but we'll throw the Mets in there. And then the Dodgers or Giants. He's going to one of those teams. I will be floored if he goes anywhere else. And I swear I will throw a tantrum if I read something that says he signed with the Houston Astros.
He's not. Yeah, they're not doing that, but it is just, that would be just, that'd be tough to take if you're any other fan and you just see that happen. But I don't think after those years of the Astros giving the Yankees PTSD, I don't think that would ever happen.
The Astros just got their slugger though, Mitch. I wanted to make sure I brought this up because it pertains to the guards. The Astros went out and got my number one target on the free agent market, Jose Abreu. And it kills me because I can't stand the Astros. It helps the guards because it gets them out of the division, right? That was the number one priority, is make sure he does not come back to Chicago. Your 2020 AL MVP who hits home runs and is a threat in the middle of your lineup. He fits a need that the Cleveland Guardians needed, which is why I wanted him. But the guards offered him, Mitch, and he went to Houston because they paid a little more. The guards weren't willing to pay as much as Houston because of Jose Abreu's age. And I think Houston obviously is just a little more desirable when you look at the track record, what they've done. But it means the guards are willing to spend money. And that's the big thing. That's all we want the Guardians to do, Mitch. When we talked about this at the end of the season, once we were eliminated in the ALDS, is where are we going to go and who are we going to sign? And now your attention turns to the next big free agent at that first base DH position, which now all of a sudden, no matter what articles you're reading from ESPN, Sports Illustrated, CBS, even though they hardly cover baseball, I don't know why they think their articles mean a whole lot. It's neither here nor there. Or The Athletic, Josh Bell, Mitch. That's the next first baseman DH that's out there. I've seen rumors that, the guards have thought about maybe a 3-year, $38 to $40 million, contract for him. Fits a need. Him and Naylor can platoon at first in DH. I'm just happy to know the Guardians made an offer for Abreu. Would I have wanted him? Yes, he was my number one target all off season. If we were being realistic, obviously I want Judge. Obviously I want Trey Turner. That's not realistic for the guards. I think it means within the next coming weeks, Mitch, we're going to be on this podcast talking about a big signing from the guards and a big acquisition in the trade market from the Guardians, because the Guardians have been linked to Murphy out in Oakland, both starting catchers in Toronto. Luke Maile just signed with the Cincinnati Reds, Mitch, which means that we are going to go after a catcher. It's been known. And a catcher and first base / DH are the two biggest needs on this team. This bodes well for the guards after seeing Abreu had an offer from us. I don't think that's why the Guardians were 13th on that list of teams to judge. But I am excited and it's promising because I think they're going to do what they did after 2016, signing Edwin Encarnacion, but signing a guy that I think is going to be here for hopefully the entirety of that contract, unlike Edwin, who was here for 2.5 years.
Somewhere around there, yeah. Well, we shall see. And then, of course, finally, it's conference championship week in college football. Really, I'm focusing on one game, Mitch. And I know there's the other ones like the SEC title game between Georgia and LSU. Georgia wins. They're good. You have the Big 12 championship game between TCU and Kansas State. Kansas State had a lead on TCU early on in the year, and then TCU turned on the gas.
You're focused on the MAC.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one that's most important.
Ohio.
Toledo and Ohio, man. Yeah, I have family stakes in both of those schools, so it'll be interesting to see. No Kent State this year. So then we have that. We have the Big Ten title game between Michigan and Purdue. That's one of two then, because the other game that I'm really focused in on is the one that I think could benefit Ohio State the most, and that's the Pac-12 game between Utah and USC. Utah is the only team that has beaten USC this year. It's going to be on a neutral site. I know that the Trojans will probably play them better on a neutral site, but I'm still holding out hope that the Utes can throw a monkey wrench into this playoff run, or the Boilermakers of Purdue get some sort of competitive streak against Michigan in the Big Ten game. Otherwise, they're done. They've set up the 4 seeds, and that'll be it.
I'm going to go to a take I've kind of had for a while.
Yeah.
Ohio State's only opportunity to get in is USC losing. I think if TCU loses close, TCU is still getting in. I just think it means TCU would be the 4 seed. I think where they've had TCU over the past weeks means something. I think that they're not going to punish TCU because they get to play an extra game. Right. And that's a different way to look at it, right? It's always been conference championship and conference champions mean more. which is right. This is a team playing a team they already beat this year, and they're going to play them again. If it's a very, very close game and TCU loses by a field goal in the last seconds and it's a clean game,
yeah,
I still think TCU's in. I really do. Now, if TCU pulls an Ohio State against Michigan, then the argument's open. But Mitch, I firmly believe TCU's in because I don't think they're going to punish a team for making their conference championship game and playing a team they've already played once and beaten, whereas USC would have to beat the team they've lost to this year. We know where the standings are. We know Ohio State's the fifth, number 5 right now, but Georgia's in, Michigan's in, and I think TCU's in. I think it comes down to Ohio State and USC. Now, if TCU gets blown out and USC loses, we are talking about just a completely different dynamic here because Alabama sits at 6th.
Yeah.
In the latest college football playoff rankings, which is bizarre. It really is because they flopped their biggest game of the year. They lost to an LSU team that had one of the most disappointing losses.
They have 3 losses right now. LSU does, but LSU had some very competitive games against good SEC teams.
Right.
And I can see where you're coming from with Alabama. There were some people that said Alabama should have been ranked ahead of Ohio State because Alabama's had a tougher schedule and they've had, the 2 losses that they had have been very close to good teams in the SEC compared to Ohio State's losing by multiple touchdowns against Michigan. I get what you're saying. Don't get me wrong.
I don't buy that. I just don't because Alabama, you lost to an LSU team at LSU, but then they just lost to Texas A&M. The only way it's going to help Alabama is if LSU can spring the upset and beat Georgia, because I don't think a 3-loss SEC champion LSU Tigers team is getting in, right? We were talking about our first 2-loss team getting in. There's no way a 3-loss team getting in.
No.
Happen. But if they beat Georgia, then it only helps Alabama in terms of the resume, because it would mean that they lost to a team that beat one of the 2 lone remaining undefeated or 3 lone undefeated teams remaining. I don't see how LSU even keeps it close. I really don't.
Yeah, I don't expect LSU to pull that off. If they did, then that really gives the committee a decision to make, because it's not like last year where Georgia still made it despite losing in the championship game because Alabama was still a good playoff caliber team. LSU's not at this point.
And they were both undefeated at the time. That's the difference here, where it's an undefeated versus a 3-loss team in both the SEC and the Big 12. Kansas State coming in at 10 with 3 losses.
Yes.
I mean, Mitch, what's fun about the rankings is if the 12-team playoff started this year, how wild would it be? Because really it's Georgia, Michigan after the performance in the game and everybody else. And there's teams out there that I've told you, I think Penn State's been extremely disrespected. I know they don't have any marquee win, but their only losses are the number 2 and number 5 team in the country, right?
Right.
I mean, it would be a blast. The first 4 seeds would get a bye. I believe Ohio State would play Tulane in the shoe, which, you'd have to think on paper Ohio State would probably be a 2, if not 3 touchdown favorite on that.
Well,
on that spread. But it just makes it more exciting now, building up to the 12-team college football playoff that's going to come into play here in a couple of years.
So let's say Purdue somehow pulls out a victory against Michigan. Does that knock Michigan out of the playoff? Because that's Purdue.
No.
4-loss Purdue.
Yep. I get what you're saying, but no, because back to my point of they're not going to punish TCU. Although it'd be a bad loss for Michigan, Michigan's still going to stay in over Ohio State because they have the head-to-head, and their loss, albeit would be a bad loss, would be because Michigan played an extra game, if that made sense. I also don't see Purdue beating them, but I get what you're saying. I would be utterly shocked if Michigan got knocked out if they lost to Purdue. But I don't think if that happened that Ohio State would get in over Michigan. I really don't. And I'm a huge Buckeye homer. I just can't sit here and tell you with any confidence in my mind that a Purdue win means Ohio State's in.
Yeah, again, I'm more focusing on USC and Kansas State, because those are the 2 teams I think can have a serious, legitimate chance of pulling it off compared to LSU and Purdue. So we want to get your guys' take on that, and we want to thank you for listening or watching today's episode. The same thing. I'm blanking out here. Excuse me. Obviously, you can find us here on SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, here on YouTube, obviously, and BigTimeSportsOhio.com, where, you can find our latest articles and videos and stuff. We have games on there as well. We also have Big Time Sports Ohio on Facebook and Instagram, BTS Ohio on Twitter, at Mitch Spinell, at Mitchell Balla. Mitch, what's the fact of the day?
I have a lame fact today, Mitch, because I just also completely forgot to get one, but this is one that everybody should know. And if you don't, you just got educated today. Go look at a map. Italy looks like a boot.
Yeah,
I dropped the ball today. I'm not gonna. That's why I prefaced it before. But it's a fact. Is it not a fact?
That might be a fact, more of a fact than that was. But it's all good, man. You'll come back next week and you'll be just as strong as ever. Just as strong as ever. Thank you so much for listening or watching to the Big Time Sports Podcast Show.